friends, welcome back. Today I would like to share with you quite possibly the best book I ever hated reading. And that would be The Quiet Gentleman by Georgette Heyer. If you're interested in finding out why, stay tuned. All right. Anyone who has been around the historical romance block, most especially Regency romance, will know the name Georgette Heyer. Georgette Heyer was a novelist at the early part of the 20th century. She was born in 1902. She is also English novelist, I should mention that. And she was quite famous for her romances, and she also wrote some very good detective novels during her career, which spanned from 1921 to 1974. Now, of course, when I began my writing, and especially when I decided to start up my Regency series, this name came up a lot. And I decided, you know what, I need to take a look at her books. I had previously read Sylvester, or the something uncle. I'll have to look up the full title, but the title is Sylvester. Loved that book. And if you're interested, there is a guest review on my website. I'll link that in the description for you. But I absolutely loved that book. It was a Regency romance. And aside from it being occasionally a little difficult to read because it was very historically accurate, that is what Georgette Heyer is best known for, is her attention to detail and historical accuracy. Aside from that, I loved it. I thought it was great. So I picked up another book, which was The Quiet Gentleman, and I decided to read that one. This one was a little bit different from her other Regency romances in that it also added in elements of mystery, which I really enjoy. I love kind of the action-adventure romance, mystery romance, I like all of that. So I thought this would be the perfect book for me. This book focuses on our hero, Gervase Frant, who is the 7th Earl of St. Erth, and he has just recently returned home from the Napoleonic Wars. He returned home from, most notably, Waterloo. And he has inherited his family's estate, but has a little bit of an issue with his family. Basically, there is some bad blood related to his mother, and his father remarried when he was a child, so now in the house is his stepmother and his younger half-brother, along with a cousin in the house. And our Earl has not spent a whole lot of time in his home because of all of this to do with his mother and people associating him with the actions of his mother. Therefore, the people in the house don't really care for him that much, meaning they don't like him that well, and are kind of upset that he returned home healthy from war. They were expecting and kind of hoping that he might not return home, and therefore the younger son would inherit. But that did not happen. So our Earl comes home, and almost immediately is met by additional issues, to include someone trying to kill him. There are multiple attempts made on his life, and he has to figure out why. Who is trying to kill him? So the premise is really interesting. How it's played out, for me, was extremely boring. And I'm going to start first with some of the things that me as a modern reader I found dull, and then I'm going to explain why me as the modern reader did not give this book sufficient justice and why it turned out to be really great in the end. All right, so starting with the things I did not like as a reader. Modern readers are really more expectant, I believe, to receive a lot more of the nitty-gritty, a lot more of the detail. There is very little emphasis put on the ability or requirement for the reader to read between the lines and get additional information which is not directly stated. So because of that, and because Hayard wrote in a time when that was not the case, people were still expected to think a lot more about what they were reading, then a lot of the information seemed very superficial, seemed very blasé, just reading it over, scanning it over. The other thing is the depiction of our hero, the Earl. By modern romance standards, this guy is not your hero. He is a dandy through and through. He is above and beyond concerned with tying the perfect cravat, having beautifully polished boots and the best tailored suit, in addition to having good horses. This guy is the total polar opposite of what modern readers think of as masculine. And that, of course, because I am a modern reader, was a little bit dull for me. Additionally, we have then our heroine in this book, whose name is Drusilla Morville, who happens to be at the house. I can't remember why. She says there as a companion, something to that effect. But as her name suggests, she's not the prettiest gal at the party. But this is not unusual for these Regency romances, either today or back in the day. I think readers throughout have always enjoyed having kind of an underdog heroine. The girl who is not the typical pretty one that the guys go after, and having the idea in your head that she's going to be the one in the end who gets the guy. And that also was one of the things I didn't like, because here we had this kind of mousy heroine and this Earl come back from the wars, and the very first thing that we know about his reaction to her is that he finds her very plain. Total Jane Eyre moment. He thinks, yeah, she's nothing to look at. But, of course, as the reader, I know, oh, but they've got to get together at some point somehow. But almost immediately, that seems like it's not going to happen, because the author introduces this other girl, this other love interest, who is the belle of the ball, who is the pretty little kind of cotton-brained gal that we think of as the one all the guys want. And in this book, all the guys wanted her. Every single one of them. So I didn't like any of that. Fast forward literally 75% of the book. I checked because I believe I was reading it either, I don't know if I had the audiobook or on Kindle, but I had some sort of electronic version of this book. And I know for a fact I suffered through 75% of this book before there was a plot twist that caught my attention and things started actually interesting me. And I'm going to tell you what that was, so many apologies if you don't like spoilers. If you don't like spoilers, skip ahead a little bit. But at 75% of the book, our hero gets shot. And that leads into things becoming interesting. Alright, I'm not going to give away any more of the end of the book. However, I do now want to go back and tell you about the things I enjoyed about the book and why I came to have a better appreciation for the book than I did during the first 75% of it. So, as mentioned, our hero is an extreme dandy, right? But what is really played down in the book, and what you are not going to notice until you start thinking about it and reading between those lines, is our hero is a hero. He is a war hero. He has just come back from the Napoleonic Wars. He's been gone for years. He was an officer fighting at Waterloo, and he laughingly mentions having horses shot out from under him. And there's one portion of the book where there's a very brief mention that, you know, he's got one of the big 4-poster beds with the curtains all around it, and he doesn't like closing the curtains. He doesn't like feeling closed in, hemmed in. He is also a massively observant person. He knows that the people in his home don't really like him that much. But he also knows it is his right to be in this home, and he owns it, and he is in charge. So he goes about taking charge in a very quiet way, quiet persistence, quiet insistence. And that is his strength. There is also this interaction with the kind of ninny-headed girl that all the guys like. Yes, our Earl does make it known that he's interested in her for a little bit. However, one thing I really liked was that the minute he realized his brother also liked her, and his brother had serious intent toward this girl, that is the last you hear of any sort of notice that the Earl pays to this girl. Nothing else is said of it. You still hear about this girl with the brother, with the other guy who comes to visit, the Earl's friend. But the Earl himself does not mention her again, really, other than in general conversation. And it's like he flipped a switch. He's no longer interested. So that, again, tells something about his character. Even though he could be cruel and nasty to his younger brother, because his younger brother is really treating him badly, because the younger brother now feels like he's been cheated out of his inheritance because the Earl survived. So even though this is going on, he is showing that he is the stronger personality, the more honest, and kind of showing more integrity in how he is dealing with the people around him. As said, he's got that nice little trick about being quiet but insistent. So there is this undercurrent that even though he's not being forceful in what he wants or in his dictates, everyone kind of gets the hint that we have to listen to him. He's not going to be put off. And every now and again, that kind of militant air comes out, that atmosphere comes out in the portrayal of this character. Finally, not to be left out, we have poor little Drusilla, who, remember, the Earl showed no interest in at the beginning of the book, in the middle of the book, for the most part of the book. Showed no interest if you're reading as a modern day reader and just kind of skimming through, taking things at face value. If you do what Hare intended you to do and read between the lines a little bit, we can see that even if the Earl was not showing a definite romantic interest in Drusilla from the start, we can see his growing appreciation of her and his growing respect for her. And that is based off of kind of a mutual characteristic that they have of being pragmatic. Drusilla is very low-key. She's not excitable, not very hyper. She has a very rational mind when it comes to everything going on around her. She draws clear conclusions in what's going on and how she should behave, and she is really not your stereotypical hyper or hysterical female from past eras. And we can see throughout the book that the Earl really likes this. He wants her opinion on things. He enjoys conversing with her. He finds her interesting. But you're not necessarily going to get that unless, as said, you read a little bit into what's going on in the scenes where they are talking together. By the end of the book, and without hopefully giving anything away, by the end of the book, she is basically the one person that he feels is extremely trustworthy and that he can depend on. So, as said, by the end of the book, I really liked it and I really enjoyed these characters. Would I read it again? I don't know about that. The first 3/4 was so hard for me, but now that I have a little bit better understanding of how I am meant to read the book, then it's possible. I would read it again. At the very least, I would read that last portion over and over again because I was just so happy with the typical romance happy ever after. Alright, so I have prattled on way too long and I am going to wrap this up. Please do let me know if you have read The Quiet Gentleman, what you thought of it, or if you are a fan of Georgette Heyer and what book of hers I should read next. Please do let me know in the comments because I'm always looking for suggestions for my reading list. Thank you again for spending the time with me. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and or liking, and I will see you next time.